Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Cornu Core, my patrons, Clayton, Ruby, Stephanie, and Jonathan, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. This is about observing and having a mirror and looking through, and what I'm trying to share with you is an experience as a child when television first came out, and one of the first children's programs had the teacher hold up a magic mirror that she could look through and see who was watching. And of course, I always wanted to hear her say Mike, and she almost never did. But I sat there spellbound, waiting for her to use my name as someone that she could see through her magic mirror. And in the innocence of childhood, and not knowing any better, believing that that could be true, especially because TV had just sort of arrived. Gravity forces the issue of alignment. Alignment is sensational via tension between 2 points. That triggers uniform usage and makes alignment sensational. So that was the sign language. And then I signed in, and that was number 1. I have 3 more, so number 2 out of 4 is talking about MMP rowings. So the subject is the set of exercises on the reformer called rowings. And the title reads, Staying Within or In and Out? Staying within or in and out? So what am I talking about there? Staying within what or in and out of what? Tension. Okay, tension. And that's about the straps and whether or not you limit your movement to keeping the straps in tension rather than being in the tension of the straps and then going out of the tension to continue the exploration of the range of your movement. And then come back into tension as part of your movement. It's very evident when your movement is one where you stay within keeping the straps in tension, and I'm just trying to point out the option of not working within the limitations of the equipment, but going out of keeping the straps in tension to continue the expression of your effort. And then when your movement carries you back into tension, you use it to facilitate your effort. And of course, going into and out of as fluidly as possible is part of the pursuit of the performance. There are other places where that happens, but I can't call them off of hand. So the point is about tension, and in making an expression in rowings, for instance, if you keep the straps in tension, that's one way of keeping your movement flowing. And yet if you let your straps go slack, you keep the expression of your effort going, regardless of whether the straps are in tension or not. Because of course the target is the mat. We're doing it without any external influence, right? Try both ways, know both ways. And then you know there are those two, there's an option between tension or no tension. I don't have a sign for no tension. Number 3, the Pilates presumption. So let me just go over my bullet points and maybe in the Pilates presumption I'm talking about, the presumption is that you know it as well as it can be known. You know it as well as it can be known. I mean, there may be more texture to what you already know, but there's nothing beyond what you know of it as it is. And the presumption, now the bullet point on presumption, it's what you do with it. See, that Pilates, whatever it is or whatever you learned and from wherever you're from, what matters is what you do with it. As an instructor, it's my point of view, right? You could also say probably for the individual themselves or just for me, but a lot of this broadcast is focused on surviving as a Pilates instructor and in addressing the presumption of what that might mean for everybody in a way that works within a tradition and it looks at Pilates through what the tradition offers. They know it as well as it can be known. And because of that, it's not a matter of what it is, it's a matter of what you do with it that matters. Oh? And the presumption that, I'm saying the same thing, that it is what it is applied to. Right? And then, in that regard, what it's applied to often is vertical markets or groups of people, like athletes or physical therapy issues, or by age, or by gender, or by modality that is brought into it. In some bizarre movie that I don't even know the name of, a person falling through a well with a bunch of hands in it. The person must have said something like, "Help." And so all the hands came out and then supported him and stopped the fall. And then by his direction, the hands would either lift him up or let him fall. By his direction. You just had to know where the hands were and how to express what direction you wanted to go. How did I get there? In social media, I see such a plethora of offerings for any one of these vertical markets. Where they're taking the presumption of what they already know towards something more specific, so that the person that learns that can do the same thing back to their clients at their studio. Right? Empowerment. So I guess here's where I ended up talking about, or making notes about, the Janus of Pilates. So that's, did I even say that? I didn't even bring that up. That in the presumption that you know it as well as can be known, that you know that what to do with it is what matters, that it's what it's applied to that what matters. That's one face of the Pilates two-faced mask, and that's looking towards the individual. The other face looks towards the ideal. And within the MMP point of view, the Pilates instructor is about taking an individual towards the ideal. There's nothing wrong with in using whatever you know about Pilates to enhance whatever else you can. Oh, and that was another title I didn't write down, called Pilates Ketchup. Or maybe Ketchup Pilates, because you add it to everything and anything. And that the presumption is that whatever you're doing is something that's then being applied to a group a group for their benefit. Athletes or physical therapy, or by age or gender or modality. See? So, number 4, I came across this term called common knowledge game. And it's about what's a definition of common knowledge is something we all believe, everyone else believes, and only then that changes behavior fast. As in the emperor with no clothes. And even though it was privately held knowledge about what you knew of the emperor's attire, it wasn't until, in this theory, what's it called, a messenger? But somebody that points out, hey, look at this, and then in so doing takes it into private common knowledge. Common knowledge is something we all believe, everyone else believes. And the key part to that for me is only then that changes behavior, and fast. So, as a Pilates instructor, in the recognition that unexplained Pilates is an emperor with no clothes, to the point that everybody knows that is probably in next, 2 more generations? A couple hundred more years? And maybe never. And maybe never. What matters to me, to you, and to others that appreciate CT and MMP, the knowledge that may not be common knowledge ever, but that you are clothed with your understanding of CT and MMP. Oh, and so I came across this on Twitter of all places. Any who challenge the prevailing orthodoxy will be silenced with surprising effectiveness. Anyone who challenges the prevailing orthodoxy will be silenced with surprising effectiveness. Because why surrender to something being common knowledge when you would just as soon it wasn't? And so to the extent that I consider you a viewer and therefore a student, as a student, I recommend to you that you recognize it may take a long time for humanity to catch up with Pilates as in common knowledge for what MMP would represent as the ideal within it. So given that that won't be common knowledge for a long time, it gives you private knowledge I don't know, but it's a fascinating subject, and it's meant to help me and you put in a reconcilable form as to who I am as a Pilates instructor. And to what extent am I, in my knowledge, in your knowledge, of pulling the curtain aside? So surprising effectiveness. The prevailing point of view is my point, right? We'll want to maintain that point of view. And we'll do so just out of human nature. Until, the more interested you are in what you're after with Pilates, you look at the original work going from Joe's book in 1945 to Romana's book written by Freeman and Eisen, the Pilates method of physical and mental conditioning. And that Joe's book wasn't around and still isn't considered much of anything because there's so little to make of. I would suggest that's like poetry, and that as poetry can be understood regardless of its terseness, so can Joe's book. That's because MMP takes the definition out of Joe's book and the statement about how the body does its thing, and then the sequence to take its point of view. And that point of view will find its popularity when other points of view become challenged and look for more foundation to what they already treasure. There's a quote somewhere about, you may have castles built in the clouds, and unless you put a foundation under it, Or you can put a foundation under it. Right? MMP is the foundation because it's ideal in its point of view. And as such, the people George Orwell talks about, well, humanity will naturally seek to, will naturally seek to challenge the prevailing authority. It says orthodoxy. It's all about discretion and what and what you let out that's relevant to the interaction that you're in. As a Pilates instructor especially. There in the moment, you're evaluating movement happening and you're deciding what's going to happen next. Right? You're in the batter's box. Except you have a lot more control over where and how you hit the ball. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Add two and two. Direct your thinking. Geist.